Mr. Sullivan.
Well, I hope it's being recorded.
That's right. That's one less thing we have to worry about procrastinating.
That's right. The audience probably doesn't know what we're talking about, but it says this interview is being recorded.
Yes. So, Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. It's been
our first
almost 4 weeks.
One back.
Almost 4 weeks that we've been out of touch. And did you have a good one?
I had a great time. Yeah, I can't believe how fast it went. You think about that, like that's the thing that you really realize about time. It just keeps marching on. Then like you think about it now, it's almost January 15th. I mean, we're halfway through January now.
Mm-hmm. Here's the thing, though, about all the time since I've had since I saw you or talked to you in December, I've used 100% of all my time.
Me too. There hasn't been a moment that I skipped.
There was none of the time that I didn't use up completely since I talked to you.
Oh, that's so funny. I love it.
Well, I have a tremendous report to you on the who, not how.
Okay, I would love to hear it.
I've done, just trying to think now, I've done, I've probably done about, since I talked to you last, I think I've done about 5 workshops, and it is slam dunk, this concept of, who, not how, and the little diagram that I just innovated on the smartboard,
yes, which was great.
The entrepreneur, and I just substitute you. I put you in the arrow, and then it shows a star, which represents a bigger and better future result. You are emotionally engaged with this future result. You come, and you have a choice about how you want to proceed. If you choose, how am I going to do this? You're in the soup. You're in the procrastination soup. And if you choose who, then you're very energized, and your world, you almost get the reward for the future result immediately if you go to who, because you've just expanded your capabilities by going to who.
Yes, that's exactly right. Well, I just, what's funny is while we were there, while I was at the last workshop in Toronto, Jeff Walker and I shot a video explaining that concept, which he just sent out today as his, he does a Sunday video, and that was today, how versus who, and it's getting lots of great comments. So I'm seeing like even the different layers of this now in my own is getting to the point where I'm not. I had a visual that was pretty interesting, and it's similar to the way you talk about front stage and backstage. And I thought about how when we're mapping out a process, we usually do it after we've figured out what all the steps that are involved in something. We've been drawing what I call the milk line, which is where it stops being my unique ability or my unique contribution coming into it, and where it starts that somebody else could do it. So for podcasts, for instance, the fact that you and I dial in, and what we're doing right now is we are producing the milk, and then as soon as we hang up, the milk contribution is over, and everything else is on the other side of the milk line now, right? So somebody else could do all of these things. And I've started now looking at, in advance, figuring that out by imagining that I'm walking into almost like a a dry cleaner or a takeaway restaurant where there's a menu and I'm only allowed on this side of the counter, I can describe to somebody what it is that I want, but under no circumstances am I allowed to go back behind the counter to actually participate in the preparation of it. And that kind of has been that's been really something that's been powerful for me. And I've really been experimenting with using the spoken impact filters that way, because it takes just as much time for me to go through the impact filter with the person who's actually going to be responsible for putting it all together than it does for me to go through the impact filter alone on my own and then still have to get together with them and have that conversation anyway. It just fits for me so much so much better.
Yeah. I find I really do the impact filter first because then I'm my attention can be totally on the other person when they get the impact filter, because I've done my thinking and they're reading my thinking. Yeah. And, and then they have questions and, they're, words are not precise, so words mean different things to different people. We all form our language, and it's usually in terms of specifics. We learn words in relationship to specific things that we can visualize, and what one person will visualize with chair will be different from what another person visualizes with the word chair, because
isn't that,
it's all...
That's like they say, a picture paints is 1,000 words.
Yeah. Well,
a word paints 1,000 pictures. Yeah.
Language is based on specifics, not on universals. It's not based on a universe. There's no such thing as a universal chair. There's just this chair and that chair and a million other chairs, but they're all different. And so anyway, it's just been extraordinary, the amount of feedback that I get. And what I do is I start the day off with it now. So I had 2 workshops, big workshops in Chicago last week. I had 50 and 60 in the room, which are big workshops for me. And I said, I got a little drawing. It'll take about 5 minutes. And I just want you to put this, just to actually draw this in your workbooks. And I put that, and I had 6 people on Thursday who came up to me at the first break. We start the workshop at 9. We have our first break at 10. And they came up to me and said, I could pack up and go home right now. That first 5 minutes was worth the trip.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
That's good feedback,
Really, that's something. It's funny how when a concept really is the right words at the right time for somebody, the impact that it can have. I'm in South Beach right now, and I've been here this week. I was speaking at J.J. Virgin's Mindshare Mastermind. And those are all, you've been to one of her big events, so they're all...
Two of them. I've spoken at 2 of them, yeah.
Okay. So this is her smaller group, her Mindshare Mastermind groups. There were 50 or 60 people here, and they're all doctors and professionals and practitioners of and often the world's best at what it is, and sometimes the only one who's figured out some of the things that they have. And when I explained that concept to them, the same thing, they come up and they're just like, that is exactly the frustration that I have, especially when they're thinking about marketing things. Their dream come true is to just have more people just to come to them, ready for them to help them, and they don't have any interest or aptitude for figuring out the marketing that's going to get those people in front of them. And they just get so frustrated to have to try and figure all that out, figure out how do I do this? And yeah, I think we're on to something, Dan.
Oh, this is really big. And, this is another way of looking at it. If you look at the school system puts all the emphasis on the individual being an isolated individual who has to learn all the hows. Okay, so I mean, right from the beginning, you're said, well, you stay in your own chair and don't look at what your neighbor's doing. Don't copy. Don't write down what they're writing. You can't look during tests. They have to do their tests. So let's say, in an extreme case, somebody has nursery school and they learn their hows, and then it's junior kindergarten, and then kindergarten, and then grade school, junior high, high school, undergraduate at university, and let's say they go on to graduate school. So we're talking about ages 3 to maybe 20, 25. So 22 years. The emphasis has been on how, and they test against hows. They get rewarded on their hows. They get everything like that, and then they go out into the marketplace, and the marketplace doesn't work on a how basis; it works on a who basis. So they've had no training, they have no habits, they have no mindsets related to who, and
I think there's some, and it's really interesting that the how is an isolating thing. It's like something like when you have finally cracked the code on how to do something, it feels like there's a difficulty for people in letting go of that, or that they're unique, that they've figured this out. I'm thinking about some of these the practitioners and the doctors and things that I've been with this week, that it's sometimes taken many, many years and hours and experiment after experiment to figure out how to actually do something that now, if the truth is told, they could train somebody how to do, they could train another how to do what it is that they do in a fraction of the time that it took them to figure out how to do it. But yet they're reluctant to let that go, or to pass that on in a way. Almost feels like they guard this as their competitive advantage. Maybe, I don't know what the psychology is of that. That maybe they feel like that's that it can't. Nobody else could possibly do this. It took me this long to figure it out.
Yeah, and, I've invested so much, it's got to be important. I mean, you've got to give meaning to all the hard work and all the isolation that you put in to get this,
Or that they want me.
Plus, there's just that their nervous system has been trained, that this is where all value and meaning in my personal life is in the howing,
Yeah.
Dean, we were right. You and I were right, because we, I never really liked learning how to do things.
Right.
And I never really did it, but, if I look at all the going back and looking at childhood, and I wrote, if I would write down my top 20 memories from childhood, it was either just me out kind of wandering and thinking about things while I was wandering, or it was talking to people. There is no thing of mastering some activity that would come in my top 20 childhood memories.
That's interesting.
not a single, and I could probably push it down to 50, and I still wouldn't get me being involved in howing.
Yeah.
And yet I was being graded. I was being graded on my how ability and everything else. But it was all the thinking and the conversations were wandering. I'm a wanderer. I like just going to some new place and just walking through. But I'm thinking about things while I'm doing it. I'm thinking about my thinking while I'm doing it.
Yes.
And so I've never gotten any much emotional reward out of mastering anything.
Right. Yeah, out of the process of it. You're right. That is. I love to figure. That's what is almost. It's really interesting. I love the insight of something because often there's when you've figured something out as an idea of what that can come in an instant, but the actual doing of it or the showing your work sort of thing takes more time. It's not as rewarding once you know how it works.
I can give you a real contrast. So, the cafe that we have at our Toronto office, our big cafe. So I have a 50-seat. It's about 50-seat cafe, and we use it for all sorts of different reasons. But what it does is it gives me an office that is completely clean at the end of every workday. So I have a table, and the table, I walk in the morning, everything's clear. There's no stacks of stuff or anything like that. So that's how I solved the office. I will never have a neat office, so I got rid of the whole concept of office. So I just have a table in the cafe, So anyway, but I didn't have a sound system in there. I didn't, somebody brought in sort of a tape recorder and everything else, but I wanted speakers and everything. So we had a team member, and he was in the tech department. And I said, I would like you to scope out for me. And I did an impact builder. On it. This is what I wanted. And I gave it to him. And it was 3 months later. And he said, well, I'm still doing the research, So finally, the fateful moment arrives. It's month number 4. And he comes in and he's got a binder that's 3 inches thick.
Oh, my.
He's got a tab, and he had investigated 15 different sound systems. And his idea of the meeting that we were having was he was going to take me through all 15 tabs and explain each of the sound systems that he had gone through. And he went to open the binder, and I took the binder and I closed it, and I said, have you investigated all 15? He said, yes. I said, and you've looked at my impact filter about what I wanted, right? And he says, which of the 15 matches up best with my success criteria on the impact? No. He said, I just want, no. I said, I want an answer now. Which one? Well, it's number 7 here. I said, show me number 7, the picture. I said, that's great. Okay, so buy it.
Right.
No. He says, but I just, I said, nope. I don't want to hear any of it. I said, if you look at the impact filter, nowhere does it say that I wanted to learn which of 15, the research of 15. You've added that to the project, but that's not what I wanted. All I really, really wanted is for you to scope out a system, recommend one, and then I'll give you the go-ahead to go purchase that system. And he was in pain because he wanted to explain all his howing.
Right. Here's how I came to the conclusion. Right.
Yeah, but I didn't care.
I love it. And that's something that you
I could see he was in pain. He was in pain because he wanted me to give meaning to his 4 months of investigation, but all I wanted him to do was to make a decision which one, and we would buy it. So,
yes.
He was my
You wanted
who.
the outcome. That's exactly it.
I turned him into a who. I turned him into a who, but he wanted to turn me into a how.
That, the thing is that is a skill on its own, though, because what you're describing is not easy for people to do. Just like it's difficult for him to just tell you the outcome, the recommendation. I think we should buy number 7, and it's the one that fits your best thing. Would you like me to do that? That his need for you to understand that as entrepreneurs, in explaining it to your the gentleman was doing all the research, what you displayed was an incredible amount of insight that most entrepreneurs would then want to go through and hear all of those things, that to feel like they had to keep their hand on the wheel kind of thing to make sure nothing was missed or that they're to see it. So to be able to just let that go. What I was thinking about, Dan, was when you made the transition from doing workshops, you're the big transitions that I know from your history of this is you figuring out the strategy circle, building a practice of working with people one-on-one as your way of facilitating or transferring the knowledge, the how that you had for people to get clarity, work with them one-on-one. The big transition was going into workshops where you could have a group of people. And then that next transition of going from other people doing the workshops. And what I'm interested in is that transition, looking back on it now, how, because you had a very specific way of, first of all, you figured out, well, how can I do this? How can I get the results of the one-on-one in a workshop format, which took you time and courage to kind of make that transition. And then you realized it was okay and you were able to get the results. And I imagine that you then went into, how can I get the results with other people? And what was just looking back on it now kind of thing, how did you or would you apply this thinking to that? Because I think a lot of people are at that stage where they're letting go of their need to be involved in actually delivering the result.
Yeah, well, I mean, real quickly, when I first became a coach in 1974, I had no method. Well, I did have a method, and that is that I'm a good listener. I can ask really good questions, but I can draw. I'm a trained artist, but I see things visually, so I was able to just take a big sheet of paper and kind of draw out the results of my asking them questions, and they would get a lot of value out of it. That was 8 years. I did that from 74 to 82. Then in 82, it struck me one day that all the drawings were kind of the same drawing, which I called the strategy circle. And I said, so instead of it just being open-ended at the beginning and we start with a blank sheet of paper, we'll start with an actual diagram, and it's flexible enough that their specific information could go on. And that was a big jump because I went 10 times in income with this diagram that I could do previously, just being open-ended about it. And they loved it, and everybody loved the process. And the other thing is I could renew them into that process. So it was 10 times on the spot, but then it became people would go on, and every quarter they'd like to go through this exercise. So that was a huge jump. But at a certain point, you run out of time. And so I said, I bet I could take, 5 to 10 people and put them in a room at the same time and take them through the diagram. And that was the next jump. And that was the workshop. And I did that so the strategy circle, I did 1982, 1989, went 10 times income, and then going into the workshop went another 10 times from 89 to 95. And then I had people who were kind of good coaches, and we had created enough of a method around the strategy circle that they could actually coach workshops. And so that was a huge jump because we now have 15 coaches, and they do 400 and roughly about this year they'll do about 450 workshop days for us. And I'm not involved in that at all. I'm not involved in any of that activity.
Right, yeah.
As I put teams in between me and thing. And then what I do is I keep jumping upwards in terms of what's the highest level workshop. 6 years ago, I jumped to the 10 times level, and now in April, I'm jumping to the Game Changer program.
Yeah,
and
very exciting.
So and then I'll have.
I'm finally going to get to see the Chicago office.
Yeah, and then 10 times. By the way, Joe Stump came back. Your buddy Joe Stump, he came back and he started his first workshop on Thursday after 18 years.
Oh,
after 18 years. So
good. He started with you.
Yeah, with me. No, he just joined an existing group. He had been in the program before, so we just put him in an existing group, and he had a great.
Great. He's great.
But the the big thing. But here's the thing. So I have a workshop in April. This is the Game Changer program, and that one workshop, which is 4 days in a year, so. You have, when people sign up, they get 4 workshops. So it's 4 days of my time. And then I would say probably about 4 days of my time to keep that updated. So let's say it's 8 days of my time in the next year. The income from those 8 days during the next 12 months will be equal to my total revenues for the first 4 years of the workshop.
Well, God bless America.
I'm single-handedly making America great again.
That's exactly right. Oh, that's so funny. But that it's so great, isn't it? I mean, I'm excited about being part of that workshop because it's every time it's like a new level of jump, if you elevate, and the 10 times workshop has been an incredible outcome and catalyst for me in my life, and so from the moment you announced it, I knew I'd be part of that because it's I'm just committed to continue to expand, But here's the thing about it, Dean, is the Game Changer, and I've really thought it through now, and I've really got a great explanation for it, which you'll see in March when you come to your next workshop. But it's strictly who, not how, because what I do is I say, well, you've developed a 10 times capability. I mean, if you take the Breakthrough Blueprint, it represents a 10 times capability over any kind of consulting you used to do, before, where you just meet with people. But the Breakthrough Blueprint is a 10 times capability. Yep.
And what the thinking here, I said, okay, take your best year, which would be the last year, and multiply it by 100. Okay, 100 times. Okay. Now, any inclination that you thought that you're going to do that, let's say you could go twice what you did last year. Well, that thought of going twice is actually a dangerous thought because the only way you could go twice is more howling with the ability you already have. But 100 times, I mean, the brain said, well, there's just no possibility of me actually being a how person here.
Yes.
So what that means, there has to be some sort of collaboration out in the world, with other people who can do the how that would take it to 100 times.
Yes.
And I see that. I see that now. So you're not even tempted. And I'll give you an example. We have a guy in 10 times. His name is Norm Dunnigan. He's from South Carolina. And he's created an automated pub. Okay, so it's a beer pub. It's called the Tap Room. And it's a really neat idea. It's a room probably about half the size of the big workshop room in Toronto. Okay, if you think about half the size. And there's one attendant front stage in this place. You walk in and you go up to, a stand and you show the person your driver's license and your credit card. And what then is issued is 32 ounces of beer that is that you get as a bracelet. A bracelet goes, it's a RFD bracelet.
Okay.
And on 3 walls of the room are 40 different beer dispensary, and you give a complete description of the beer. Yeah. And they have glasses that you can use, and you can have as little as an ounce, as much as 16 ounces. Okay. But you only get 32 ounces. You only get 32 ounces. That's all you get. So the traffic moves through this place really, really quite quickly. People come for an hour and a half, and then it moves out, and then new people come in. Long story short, from start to finish, took him 8 months to actually create this concept and open the doors. And since then, it's been 70% profit. Week in, week out, 70% profit. Okay.
Wow.
And he's in South Carolina, so the weather's kind of mild. So he's got an outdoor patio that's got heat. He can heat it if he needs to. So he's got a massive amount of room. And so we were talking to him, and this isn't even his business. His business is waste products. He collects waste products. But he just had an idea for this kind of pub, and put it together. And now I says, well, what do you want to do now? And he says, well, I'd like to go national. And I says, okay, so let's start with the idea of 100 of these. Okay. And he says, well, I haven't the foggiest idea how to do that. And I said, now here's the really interesting fork in the road for you, is that you could staff up and bring on all the skills of going national and everything like that. You could do that if you wanted, and you'd be in a lot of howling that you don't like. Or you could say, I need a nationalizer capability.
Yes, right.
And I'm looking for one person who would be as much in love with this idea as I am. And so we would collaborate to do that. And I would never do more than I'm doing now. I'll just do quality control on the model, but because it's my model and I've created it.
Yeah.
And the other person would do the expansion because this is what they do. And we've already linked him up with 2 people from Strategic Coach who would just love doing this. Okay.
Yes.
But I said properly, you should be able to go 100 times with maybe 1 or 2 meetings and no lawyers.
Wow. I mean, yeah, and that's, when you were talking about the the collaboration, that's when we at our workshop, we talked about this idea of collaboration versus vendorship.
Yes.
That was the catalyst that moves things up. That you've got your idea, somebody else has their capability. What you've just described with that gentleman, that's a neat thing, and I'm listening to that for myself because that's very timely advice for me. I look at, I'm at a situation where my Breakthrough Blueprint events, I do 9 of those a year. I don't really want to do more of those, and I don't think that they're as effective if I had, through 30 or 40 people in them. So I think in that same way that it would be a good thing for me to find who could do these the Breakthrough Blueprint workshops as well.
Yeah, and they have to be in. But the thing is, if you're doing 9, multiplied by 100, and there's 900 of these. Okay,
yeah, which I think there's the thing is that, though, I think that on that level, like we look at it, that the way you describe it, okay, so right now, your highest level workshop is $50,000 for somebody to be part of the Game Changer program. So there's a lot of people who would love that information, but are not at a point where they can spend $50,000 on a workshop, but they could spend $5,000. Same like the way that your the difference in the price between doing the 10 times program with you versus doing the signature program that it opens it up. It opens it up to more people.
Yeah.
And I look at it that's kind of the thing. Like you're at the beginning of this, like at the peak of it, taking it to the newest and highest levels kind of thing. You're creating, symphonies out of your stuff here, and that's the way I was describing that. I look at my 8 profit activators as a framework that is almost like music theory. That you can that every the way I describe it often is every song ever written is some combination of the 8 notes in an octave, right? And it's the same thing that every business success ever built is some masterful execution of a strategy of applying the 8 profit activators. And so you can equally take those 8 notes and you can learn to play, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star with one finger, or you can, depending on your capability, take it up and conduct create a symphony with many parts. And so taking that theory, that music theory or this profit activator theory, and bringing it to a point where any business at any level has access to the thing that's going to take them to the next thing. Because I don't have any interest. I don't have any interest in personally being in a room with people teaching them how to play Twinkle Twinkle with one finger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, we have lifestyle choices along with that.
Right.
Just what we like doing, and that. But the thing is, I came to an understanding over the last month or so that if I can get them to understand the logic of taking it 100 times, then it's a pretty easy thing for them to go 10 times,
right.
And I just realized, that if I was starting the 10 times program today, started it in 2012, but if I was starting it today, my first planning model would be going 100 times and working out the logic, because 10 times still allows people a little bit of wiggle room for howing, but 100 times doesn't allow you any wiggle room at all for howing. There's no way. I just thought,
when you said that, the first time you presented it with the 10X program, the 10 times program, was that thinking of, doubling feels like you're just going to put your head down and work harder and be more efficient and be more productive, can double. But when you said that originally, that 10 times makes you kind of put your pencil down and realize you can't do that by just working harder. But then thinking 100 times is even another another
100 times.
magnitude of that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's just no. You won't even have a a vapor of a thought that I'm going to do the how on this, because there's no way I could do that. And I noticed that there were still people doing howing around 10 times. So I said, well, the multiplier is not big enough. We'll go another 10, and then we'll flush the suckers out.
Yes.
All those howers. Yeah. And and
the first time. That's the first time I've heard you say that.
Yeah.
And I already have that thought already. I mean, I have that thing because I do the math on 100 times, and you realize, wow, okay, that's a big business. Yeah.
I mean, you're going to do it, but what would be the logical implications of 100 times if you're going 100 times? Well, Dean's just talking to people. He's just talking to people. Dean isn't doing. First of all, there's nothing to do, because the model exists.
Right. Oh, that's funny.
No, the materials are there. I mean, you might add, some other communication dimensions to it, like multimedia. You might do that, but it's not a big deal. And it's basically people are great at carrying on conversations for 3 days. Where they're going through the 8 profit activators and just getting people to talk about what they're doing. I mean, the people in the workshop are writing things down, so you can have them talking to each other, and that's all very constructive thinking and very constructive learning.
Yeah.
So,
and I've already figured out
the big thing,
the worksheets and all that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But the big thing is that your life doesn't get any more complicated. It may be, a series of meetings with the other side of the equation, the other capability that you're adding to it, but it's not onerous, because if you've chosen well and they're a great collaborator, then they're doing the howing, or they're leading the howing on the other side of the line, and you don't have to do that howling.
Yes. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the whole. It's funny you bring up Joe Stump, because we were talking about that last year. We did a Breakthrough Blueprint together in San Diego, and during that we were talking about our collaboration. We worked together for 14 years. And it was really exactly what you're describing. We had somebody who was in charge of running the team and building the organization. And of course, I was in Toronto and Florida, so I was never really in the office on the day-to-day stuff. But we were able to. We did one big event a month, and during that event, we would have. When I wasn't on stage speaking, we'd have meetings, our conversations about what we're doing moving forward. And it's really like those conversations with the right who's are like flywheels, that they that they can't, the idea stuff from concentrate takes more time to execute. So every one of those meetings that we would have once a month would fill up would set that flywheel in motion to actually execute the things that we were talking about, make the adjustments, and then be ready to share the results and talk about adjustments at the next meeting in the next month. And so it was really great collaboration,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's fascinating to me, because what I'm doing now in the workshops is the neat thing is that people have signed up for the Game Changer program starting in September, and so in every 10 times workshop now, I have people in the room who are already signed up for the Game Changer program, and they're probably going to be back in that I mean, if that Chicago week, I have the Game Changer, but I have 2 other 10 times workshops. So the 10 times is actually the golden ticket. We have, people can go to any number of workshops they want. But I have them, and so what I do is I put a stool up front, and they get up on the stool, and they have a mic, and I have a multimedia now that goes through the entire logic of the Game Changer, how it actually gets constructed. And they talk through their model, and it's just fascinating to people to hear these models that people have and the kind of collaboration that they're doing. And I said, here's the thing with each of you. I said, we have this group starting in April, and, I expect to fill up the room. But I said, and you are sitting there and you're thinking about it and you're saying, gee, I can see that in developing just my company the way I'm developing it, I'll probably get to the point where making more money by working harder at the model I have just isn't going to make any sense whatsoever. Okay?
Right.
So you're faced with the ultimate decision, then, which all entrepreneurs are faced. And and it's so funny. I said there's a fork in the road. I mean, there's like the who versus how, but that fork in the road has got another thing. I said, if you go Game Changer, why this is the fork you're taking. Well, first of all, it's pure unique ability because you can go 100 times, but never go outside your unique ability. Because what you're bringing into the game is simply the 10 times capability that you've already developed. And that's of extraordinary value to the collaborator partner that you've done. That person is looking for you as much as you're looking for them, but you've got this 100 times result, and it's just growth and expansion and abundance for the rest of it. More so than at any time in your entrepreneurial career, that's one fork of the road. Here's the other fork of the road. You get really bored, okay? And with your business, and if it does 50% more income, it's not of great interest to you because it's doing well already. You get really bored, and then you retire, and then you retire, and then you start declining because there's no more challenge, there's no more clapping audience, there's no more stimulation, and then you die.
Yeah, that's not the appealing path.
Well, I said, but how many people do you know who actually chose this, who are entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
They were really hot, and then
or
they
you buy a
hit
sports
50
franchise, like you said. That's where the entrepreneurs buy a sports team. They're on the decline when they're buying a sports franchise. Yeah.
Short the stock. Short the stock when they do that, So the other, I mean, it's like Elon Musk, I mean, I don't know what kind of game he's playing, but every time people bring up the fact that he's not hitting any of his production numbers, selling the new low-price Tesla, he says, we're really getting ready to create that Mars rocket.
Wow.
Every time he starts talking about his rocket ship to Mars, I say, boy, he must be really not hitting his production numbers on that car.
There's more. Oh, that's so funny. Over here, look over here.
Over here. Pay no attention. Pay no attention to those production numbers. But the whole thing is that, I'm sitting here at 73, as I've reminded the listeners before, and I'm looking at this Game Changer thing, and I said, this is the most exciting entrepreneurial move of my entire life. I said, I am so excited about this, and because it's all about, who is doing this and who is doing this. And I got 50 who's in a room who are all collaborating. What kind of learning is there?
Right. I can't wait. I mean, it's going to be amazing. This is even just in the panels that you've had, the Game Changer panels, the Catalyst panels, are some of the ideas and things that have come out of just 4 or 5 people bouncing ideas and building on each other. You see how that could totally
really fit.
I like it.
And you know why we're having this conversation right now, Dean?
Tell me.
Because we were right at 6 years old.
Because we were right at 6 years old. We got it. And I was able to hold off for 51 years now on still maintaining this ability to achieve excellent results with what seems like little effort, and not having to get myself to try harder.
Yeah, and I was looking at your interview on the movie, the movie that we put out there, where you're talking about the grind of, the grind of being an entrepreneur, and people, luxuriating in the, the awfulness and the grind of that, and that's a very powerful portion of the very powerful.
Well, I think it is true that's something that. I think the words I used in the thing were that we sort of fetishize the hustle, and that you've got to be like, sun up to sundown, working hard, grinding it out, and sacrificing, and all these things, and we kind of reward
the fact that your
behavior.
The fact that your fifth wife doesn't like it any better than the first 4 is of no consequence.
Man.
Everything. But this is really exciting, and this is the Joy of Procrastination podcast, and I think we've really, better than anything I've ever seen, identified the reason for procrastination, and it's the fork of the road after you've fallen in love with a future possible result, where you take the how route rather than the who route. And that's why you procrastinate, is because it's going to take you into energy draining how work, and that's why you procrastinate. And I feel very, very solid about the insight with this one.
Yes, me too. That's great. So what's your next your big thing that's happening here in as you're starting the year?
Well, the big thing is, to fill up the seats now. I mean, butts and seats is really the task right now. So we're at halfway, where we have 25 out of 50. And, but my feeling is that we're within the 3-month window now, so it starts becoming a little bit more urgent. People to make up. We've got about 15 who've said absolutely I'm there, but no app yet and no check. So no reality, no reality until there's an application and a check. But my goal is February 28th, heading towards April 10th. That will be at 40. We'll have 40 in and then that'll be a big deal, and for us. But I've already worked out the workshop. I mean, you'll be quite amazed what the workshop actually looks like, because it's utterly simple, and so it's very, very exciting to me right now, because that was another goal, that by February 28th I would have the entire model of the program worked out, and then the first workshop, totally clear about the first workshop. So, anyway, awesome. It's really neat. It's really neat, and it's as neat as the original strategy circle that got me going. I mean, I think it's the most interesting dynamic that I've created since the original strategy circle. And
I can't wait.
It's very it's that whole thing that when my basic operating principle is that when I get excited by an idea, I say, I'm going to put on a play.
Right.
I'm selling tickets to this play. Well, what's the play about? Well, what do you want the play to be about?
It's going to be awesome.
I don't know what it is, but it's going to be great. Trust me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I mean, how many people, you have your favorite authors and your favorite movie makers, and you've earned the right, or you've earned the a group of people that's all you need to say.
Yeah.
Sometimes your favorite writers, they just have to say, I'm writing a new book or I'm making a new movie, and everybody is they're in no matter what,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
it's built that reputation.
That's where your credibility. Credibility. By the way, movie not to be missed is The Darkest Hour with Gary Oldman as Winston Churchill. Churchill. Hands down, he's gonna. Not that this is a sign of anything great, but he's going to win the Academy Award. I mean, it's just
great.
an amazing performance. Yeah.
Is that the one with the trailer where he's yelling at him to tell him to stop interrupting him while he's interrupting him?
Yeah, stop interrupting me while I'm interrupting you.
That's right. Oh, that's great.
No, but some really great, very gripping movie. We saw it on Christmas Day, and they just opened it because they have to get it in before New Year's.
Academy Awards,
For Academy Awards. So they just opened it in a couple of theaters here in Toronto, and we went to see it. It was really just sheer pleasure and very gripping. I mean, and anyway, so it was a great movie.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I can't wait. I always take your movie recommendations very seriously, so I will immediately proceed to the theater to see Darkest Hour.
All right.
And then I will look forward to our next Joy of Procrastination conversation.
Yes, indeed, which is in the schedule.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay. Thanks, Dean. Bye.
Have a great week. Bye-bye.